area that was, that could be attributed to climate change. We've seen a huge influx in natural disasters such as hurricanes, earthquakes, other stuff like that. And Sandy's something that impacted a lot of people locally. It impacted me. It impacted a lot of people I know. So
yeah, like there's at least maybe half a dozen people who I know who lived on the Barrier Islands, and were they were some of them weren't totally devastated, but it ca- they came pretty close to being totally devastated.
yeah,
By
my grandparents have a shore house down in the Barrier Islands, and we actually had to rebuild it because of Sandy. We had like 4 or 5 inches of water.
Yeah, there was one of my there was a family friend of ours. She lives in Mystic Island, and it was like the aftermath of a tsunami. There was and I kid you not, there was an actual motorboat on on her like patio that was like on the back of her house, because like she boarded right on this lagoon, and the whole water levels had just carried that motorboat basically to basically her basically her veranda in the back of her house.
Wow.
And it was just absolutely insane.
Yeah, so those are some of the local impacts on climate change that we see.
Thank you for being involved. Your student activism, whether you believe it or not, has implications on the national scale as well. So what are your opinions right now on the Trump administration's current environmental initiatives?
He's going in the wrong direction at 60 miles an hour. It's like, yeah, no, okay, so basically if it could be compared to like a car going down the highway, he's just, okay, instead what we should be doing is we should be just turning around in the opposite direction, or at the very least slowing down. No, he's pushing the pedal to the metal and just accelerating. He's making it far worse.
Yeah, whether or not you agree with the Trump administration's policy on climate change, I think it's important that everyone goes out and votes today. Anyone who's wondering where their polling place is, there's actually a table set up outside the library that is tabling. They're asking you to fill out a little postcard asking why you voted. There's cookies, snacks, there'll be pizza later. They can help you find your polling place. There's also a shuttle that is running every about 15 to 20 minutes to the local polling place. So if you are registered to vote on the Galloway campus, or have the same polling location as the campus, then you can actually get a free shuttle to and from the polling place today. So everyone make sure you go out and vote, not just on for things like climate policy, but for the economy, for foreign policy. There's so many different things that are going on, and that it's very important for you guys to go out there and vote today. And if you find the time to do so, we definitely encourage you to do so.
Yep. Blood, sweat, and tears were shed for your right to vote today, so please take advantage of the opportunity.
Yep. Anything else you'd like to say about echoing climate optimism?
And maybe I can add the fact that, okay, so as I said previously, this club was formed just a little over a year ago, and it's just looking back on it, like the kind of stuff that we've done in that time period it's actually a pretty good accomplishment as far as like how we actually have gotten a ton of things done in that short time period, and there's still a lot of work ahead of us. So yeah, I'm gonna be probably busy the next few semesters with doing work for them.
Yeah, you guys, we have a lot of environmental clubs here at Stockton, but Echoing Climate Optimism, even though they're new, they've been at their name's been out there and they're doing big things. I'm very proud of you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate you coming to talk about how climate change is important in today's local and as well national politics.
Mm-hmm.
So today is election day. We'll be right back shortly with some election coverage. Remember, this is Good Morning Galloway on 91.7 WOFR, and we will see you in a few minutes.
Is that guys?
Yep.
Nice, man.
Good stuff, Andy. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, no problem, man. I'll probably shoot you a text later about if you want to just like or promote it on your Facebook page at all.
Yeah, I already put all the link out. It's live. So
Alright.
I think I missed like the first like minute or two, but a lot of it's gonna be on there.
Okay, so yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I'll tag you on the Facebook.
Oh, sorry.
Good. Alright, well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Hey, John.
Hey, good, how you doing?
You can pop squat here.
Yeah. Technically, we're not allowed to have that there.
Oh,
Should
okay.
just leave it. You can either leave it over there or
Oh,
just,
okay.
yeah, as long as it's away, it should be okay. Speaking of that, I'm gonna get a drink.
Alright.
See you guys. See ya. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, sorry about the notes. I don't know why they wouldn't have went through.
Yeah.
But we're just talking about like the stock and pull and like general
Yeah.
collection stuff. It's nothing
Yeah.
crazy.
Okay. What numbers in case anyone was there, but let me turn my cell phone off. Ugly out there for us.
At least it's not cold though. You know?
Yeah.
Alright. So, do you want to just talk about New Jersey, or do you want to talk about national races as well?
I'm better off with New Jersey. I mean, national races, I just know what I read.
Okay. I mean, so we're probably gonna start off in like 3 or 4 minutes. Do you want to stay on until noon, then when we get off, or do you want to just stay
Whatever
until
you need, I
1:45?
can stay.
Okay, because I mean, we could do at first we can do the New Jersey stuff, and then like around like 11:45 we can take a break if you want to stay on for like 10 or 15 minutes of like national stuff. We
Sure.
can do that.
Okay.
Yeah. We're just gonna do mostly like Senate races, like the bigger ones, not like
Right.
everything. We're gonna do
Right.
like Texas, North Dakota, Missouri.
How's your semester been?
Busy is unbelievably busy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm teaching the class as
Oh,
well
yeah.
as doing polling, so it's
Oh wow, I can only imagine.
nonstop.
I gave you the disc to read the song, right?
Oh yeah, I always forget.
Yeah, New Jersey is really a hot spot for this election. They really are. Multiple districts that can flip.
So Stockton had Menendez up 12, and Quinnipiac had him up 15 or
15.
15,
Yeah, but I don't know. I think a lot of people might go to the polls and vote the other way. We'll see. I can't believe Jess is voting for Hugan.
yeah. She really?
Yeah.
What?
She's like tweeting about it and shit.
Oh my god. I'm not.
Well, what we found in the Stockton poll has been repeated in other polls, so I'm pretty confident that's really what's happening out there.
Yeah, I think he's gonna win by at least like 12, 14. I think Stockton's probably.
Yeah.
This rain might depress the turnout.
Yeah. How's the weather around the country though? Is it supposed to be rainy everywhere?
I don't know, but I know it's raining in North Jersey too. Probably means New York City.
Yeah.
But New York's going to go Democratic no matter what.
Yeah.
Progressive as possible. It's only raining. It's only a storm on the East Coast, Chicago, up north.
You guys ready? Ready?
No.
Of course you're not. Why would you be?
Welcome back to WLFR 91.7 Pomona. You are listening to an album by Swearin called Fall Into the Sun. We listened to the records Big Change, Dogpile, and Grow Into a Ghost. My name is Billy Watt, and I'm here with my co-host TJ Urbanik.
Welcome back, everyone.
We are Lakeford Radio's in-house news network, Good Morning Galloway, and we are here with special guest John Frugian from the Stockton Polling Center and the William J. Hughes Center for Public Policy. Thanks for coming on, John.
My pleasure.
Happy to see you again. All right, so we'll just get right into it. Obviously, it's Election Day. We are talking about some pretty key races. So first, locally, we have the Van Drew, Senator Jeff Van Drew going against Republican Seth Grossman. We touched on this last week, but still significant. What's your take on that race?
Well, it's a very interesting district in that it has switched over the years. Before Bill Hughes won the seat, who the Hughes Center for Public Policy is named after, it was held by a Republican, Charlie Sandman. During the Watergate year, Democrats had a wave election and Bill Hughes won and held it for 20 years. And then a Republican, Frank Lobiondo, has held it for the last 24 years. And he won in a Republican wave election. And so, is this a wave election year? It's pretty certain, based on polling, that I shouldn't say it's certain, but it looks pretty likely Jeff Van Drew is going to win that seat and take it back for the Democrats. Our latest poll had him up by 17 points. He was leading in every major county in the district. He was leading among women by 30 points. He was leading among independents by 30 points. And the signature issue of Seth Grossman, immigration, we asked, well, what do you think about some of the specifics about immigration, like building the wall, and about family separation, and about the Dreamers, should they be allowed to become citizens? In every case, the public was against the Trump-Grossman agenda on those topics, and more permissive. So even on Seth Grossman's major issue, it seems to be cutting against him in the district in our polling.
Yeah, I think the Stockton poll, nationwide, the top two biggest issues are healthcare and immigration. But I think the Stockton poll showed that in Jersey, healthcare is most important, but then income and property taxes come slightly above immigration, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And while these races, particularly the 2nd Congressional District, as well as congressional districts like the 3rd and the 7th in New Jersey, while are important locally, actually have a lot of implications nationally. There was actually a midterm analysis expert on CNN saying that a lot of these districts in New Jersey, like the 3rd and the 7th, and here in the 2nd, that's the Republicans need to hold these districts to be able to take back the House, and if they're losing in New Jersey and in districts they have held historically over the last 10, 20 years, they're going to have a very hard time to take the House. So these local races actually have wide-scale national implications for the House of Representatives and the balance of it after this midterm election.
Yeah, Jeff Van Drew seems like more of a lock than I know Andy Kim and Tom MacArthur in a tough race, and I'm not sure what's going on in District 7, but I'm sure they're tight. There's a lot of across the country, Republican incumbent houses are House representatives are being challenged. Like, for example, we'll go into it later in Texas. There's Republican incumbents who have won by double digits for 2 or 3 terms, even more, but now they're being challenged by new Democratic candidates.
Sure. When you look at some of these House districts in New Jersey, really 4 districts that could flip, and that would give the Democrats 1/6 of the seats that they need to take control. In the 3rd district, we polled, and it was very, very close, pretty much a tie. And you mentioned the issues of health care and income taxes, and those are very closely linked with the Trump agenda. And Andy Kim, the Democrat, is really using them to run against incumbent Republican MacArthur. MacArthur was one of the key players in attempting to repeal Obamacare, and he's the only Republican in the New Jersey delegation who voted for the Trump tax reform, which eliminated a big part of the property deduction in New Jersey. So Those two issues were the number 1 and 2 in our poll, and very, very much on voters' minds as they're watching this race.
Yeah, me and Billy extensively covered the Trump tax reform bill, and the fact that MacArthur had voted for it and had been a very large proponent for it was a very big deal, especially because of those state and local tax deductions that they were removing that were going to hit states, especially blue, larger states hard, like New York, New Jersey, Maryland, and California. So a lot of where we're seeing these swing districts or these districts possibly flipping from Republican to Democrat are happening in those states. We're seeing it in California, in Dana Rohrabacher's district, as well as a wide array of districts out in California.
Just talking a little bit about these issues that are popping up, what's really interesting, we've been polling since 2012 at the Stock Polling Institute. And over the years, it's been pretty consistent when we ask what's the most important issue in this election. It's almost always jobs and the economy. This year, it's different. Jobs and the economy are lower, and immigration, healthcare, taxes, way up. So that's unusual. People, and we just ask people, what's the most important issue? We don't prompt them. Whatever they say, we record. Yeah. A lot of people are saying the issue this year is Donald Trump himself.
Yeah. And
they're saying the issue is to get the Democrats in control of Congress. And we're not prompting them. This is what people are saying. So this is really an unusual year in that people have shifted their focus off jobs and the economy, which probably the Republicans are sorry to see because it's a good economy, and they've really not been able to run on that economy because there's so much else forcing their attention.
Yeah, the midterm election has always been first and foremost pretty much a referendum on the sitting president, and I think this is true for this election more so now than ever. Donald Trump, President Trump himself, last night in a rally even said himself, I'm basically on the ballot, and I think that's true. A lot of people are going to the ballots in mind thinking that R means President Trump and Democrat means not President Trump, and I think that's something that we're going to have to look at today. Especially, I think it's going to be very hard for polls to capture the emotion in the electorate this year. So we're going to have to see exactly how things play out, and I think we can see a lot of surprises on both sides all over the country today.
Yeah, it's no surprise that this election, is centered around Donald Trump. A CNN poll showed that basically 70% of voters are voting to send a message to President Trump. I think 28% of those were in support of Trump and 42 were against. So yeah, this is definitely a Trump-centered election, which is not surprising because, he dominates a lot of the political center that is going on in America today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he's very unpopular in New Jersey. Our poll and other polls have consistently shown maybe in the mid-30s his favorability ratings, and 50% think he's doing a poor job in some of these polls. So it's a very strong factor, I think, driving a lot of people. And we'll see. You talked about polling and whether it's going to capture these voters. In 2016, a lot of people felt the Trump voter was missed in polling. Pollsters missed some of these angry middle class, lower class white male voters who felt the system was not doing them justice, and they were missed in polls. Question now is whether young, angry voters who maybe aren't always captured in polls are going to turn out and vote, and maybe the Democratic swing was missed in polling. So it's going to really be interesting to see the exit polls from tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the interesting things I've seen over the years in polling is that we've moved away from landline-only polls. Used to be the staple polling. If you had a landline-only poll, that was considered reputable. And now, because of a lot more younger Americans don't have a landline phone, and now they're getting energized about this election, now we're seeing landline mixed with cell phone polls and other things like that. And I think that's a good way to try and capture the excitement that this election has brought.
Yeah, turnout so far has been, even in early voting, there's already been 31 million people who have casted a ballot, which are pretty tremendous numbers. And yeah, I think there's, Donald Trump, he's stirring the pot. I think more people are getting politically involved, or at least talking about it. I don't know if that will reflect in turnout or not, and also, the weather is another impact, but it seems that turnout will be big, and usually, with big turnout, usually goes into the Democrats' favor. And it seems that the past 2 years have motivated voters to go to the polls.
Unfortunately, for the Democrats, bad weather generally dampens their turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, however, I think this is a much different year. We see that in midterm elections, Republicans are generally, we hear the saying, Democrats fall in love and Republicans fall in line, and that's especially true of midterms. However, I think the general knowledge of the fact that there's an election going on, it's highly publicized, and the energy in the Democratic base could actually swing that pendulum back over to the Democrats' favor. Usually they have the favor in the presidential election years. However, this midterm, I wouldn't say the Republicans have the favor of momentum or excitement, or just the fact that they show up more. I wouldn't give them that bet this time.
Typically, the party of the president loses seats during the midterm elections.
Yes,
That's a
it's-
typical.
Yeah, historically, pretty much every time, unless they're wildly popular. But yeah, like I said, it's a referendum often on the sitting president, and oftentimes it's giving them less power because they go in with, usually they go in with a strong mandate with members of Congress being elected under them. And, in President Trump's case, he has both parties underneath him, and now this is the voters giving him a check. And I think that's probably what's going to happen in some way or another, whether that's the Democrats just taking the House or just gaining a lot of seats and then even possibly taking the Senate, who knows.
Well, looking at this dynamic in the U.S. Senate race in New Jersey, it's actually one of the few races where the Republicans are hoping to actually flip a seat. But we've done polling in New Jersey about this race, and our last poll shows Bob Menendez, the incumbent Democrat, with a 12-point lead over Republican challenger Bob Hugin. And that shows Menendez really making up some ground. We did a poll released October 1st in which it was very, very close. Menendez was ahead by only 2 points. In this poll, he's up by 12 points. And the difference is a lot of Democrats who were kind of so-so about Menendez and not sure they wanted to vote for him in the earlier poll seem to be coming home. He had only 80% of the support of Democrats in the first poll. Now that's up to 87. He's also gained ground among independents. The campaign has been so negative, and the ads Hugin has run have been brutal. It's really taken its toll, the corruption charges on Menendez. But Donald Trump is extremely unpopular in New Jersey, and we asked, what is going to motivate your vote in the Senate race? And we gave them 4 options. The biggest 2 options were Donald Trump and control of the Senate. Those are the issues that were going to help decide how they voted. Menendez's corruption charges were only 19%. Hugin's charges that he gouged on cancer drugs, barely a blip. And among Democrats, 95% of Democrats said the issue in Menendez's race was Donald Trump and control of the Senate. So they may not be happy with Bob Menendez, but they are opposed and united in their opposition to the Trump and Republican majority in Washington.
Yeah, before you even said that, I was going to say this race is most likely going to come down to whether or not voters hate Donald Trump more in New Jersey, or they hate Menendez's corruption charges or dislike them. And that data shows that clearly control of the Senate and Donald Trump's presidency is clearly much higher. And while the corruption charges for Menendez do ring an alarm for Democrats, Republicans, and independents alike, I think polling is showing that it's the controlling the Democrats taking control of the Senate is much more important than his corruption scandal going on. So we saw the Stockton poll have a 12-point percentage lead for Senator Menendez over Hudgen, and we also saw Quinnipiac poll have Menendez up 15. So that's a large change from the Stockton polling that we saw just a month ago. But so it's looking like he's going to pull away with at least a double-digit lead based on polls.
And we were talking about cell phones. We, in our latest poll, 70% of our interviews were done by cell phone. And, I'm going to say that our first poll fell a little bit short in that area, and we probably didn't represent young people and minority voters as well as they are represented in the population. So we corrected that in the second poll by really concentrating on cell phones, which gives you a much more representative sample, and our numbers were right on this poll. So, but a lot of Democrats, have come home to their party, but I think the relentlessly negative advertising blitz has actually hurt Hugin a bit as well. In our first poll, Hugin was seen as a positive. His positives were higher than his negatives. In the latest poll, those positives have gone down and more people see him in a negative light. And I think maybe his ad that he did about underage prostitutes, I think may have just turned some people completely off. And now both candidates are viewed very negatively. So when that's equal, then the other issues become more prominent.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's just interesting to see that Menendez still has a 12 to 15-point lead, with a corruption scandal looming over him.
Yeah, even after his primary performance too, like a no-name challenger with almost little to no fundraising, put a real challenge into Menendez. Like, I think if any formidable candidate such as John Wisniewski was put up in the primary, I think Menendez would have been defeated. But I guess the partisan politics are pretty strong in New Jersey. No one wanted to go against Senator Bob Menendez.
Yeah, if there were any other Democrat, we wouldn't even be talking about this being a race probably.
No.
There are 900,000 more Democrats in New Jersey than Republicans. That's a huge block of voters. And New Jersey really tilts blue. And so the fact that this is close shows how upset people are with the corruption charges against Bob Menendez. But it's a Democratic state, and that's a big number, 900,000 voter difference.
Yeah, I think without corruption charges, Menendez would be up at least 20 points by now, or any other Democratic challenger. But he's still expected to win. We'll have to see today. We're going to take a short break. Remember, you're listening to Good Morning Galloway on 91.7 WLFR Pomona Radio.
Thanks for tuning in. When we come back, we'll be talking about the other U.S. Senate races going on nationwide.
And we'll be right back.
That was good.
So, we were just going to talk about Texas, Missouri, and then like a couple other. I just have like the Senate map up for 5:38. I don't know if you want to stay on or not. It's up to you.
I probably wouldn't add much to it, really.
Okay.
If you want me to, I will. I mean, I can.
If you want.
Talk about it.
Honestly, yes. You can stay on. Just pop in whenever you. You don't have to. Go in too much, but pop in whenever you have anything to say.
I don't have that much to
No,
say.
the interesting thing I saw is that on Twitter, I want to see if I can find it. Actually, I can find it. Someone put up all the districts that Trump won in West Virginia.